Hello, Internet students. I'm Dr. Jim Ball, and I am here to talk to you today about speech act theory. Now, I know you all read a little bit, an excerpt from J.L. Austin's 1955 lecture series, How to Do Things with Words, and that's what we're going to dig in deep on today. Speech act theory, as you might have gleaned from that text, is a theory of performative utterances, and it's just like the title says. It is a theory of how we do things, how we act in the world by speaking. So Austin's starting point for this theory is to isolate two categories of utterances, two types of statements one can make. And he calls one performatives, and the other he calls constatives. The excerpt you read didn't cover constatives, but I think we need to know them to really get at what performatives are. We need to understand constatives, to understand what's so unique about performatives. Constatives are what we think about most often when we are writing or speaking or uttering words. Most of our utterances are constative utterances. In fact, that sentence that I just spoke was a constative utterance. Constative utterances are descriptions, things we say to describe the world, speech that merely says what is out there in the world, that denotes what preceded the act of speech. So, constative utterance might be that this shelf of books is brown. Those ones up there are white and red and so on. The shelves are color-coded, we might say. This is a set of constative utterances. We could say J.L. Austin was a British philosopher. That's another constative utterance. You are all watching me via the internet. This is a constative utterance. Constative utterances are utterances that are either true or false. These are true or false statements. Reveille is a German shepherd. That's a false statement, but it's also a constative utterance. So a good starting point for thinking about what performative utterances are, then, is to recognize that they are forms of speech in which one doesn't describe or report or state anything. And so it doesn't make sense to say that a performative utterance is true or false. Performative utterances are not true or false statements. In the excerpt you read, there were 5 key examples of performative utterances. Saying I do in a marriage ceremony, making a promise, naming a ship, making a bet, baptizing a child. These are the 5 that we read about, and there are legions more, infinitely more performative utterances out there. In each of these cases, saying I thee wed, or I promise you, or I bet that, or I name this ship, or I baptize this child, is not to describe something that already exists. It is to do the thing that the words indicate. It is to get married, to make a promise, to make a bet, to name a ship, to baptize a child, to bring this new state of affairs into being in the world. And so in each case, it also does not make sense to speak of these things as true or false, but rather to speak of success and failure. For Austin, it's success and failure, happy or unhappy, felicitous or infelicitous. So an example might clarify. Austin gives us the example of a bigamist, right? Someone who is secretly married to one person but attempts to marry another person. It would not be false for the person to say, I thee wed, but the marriage would be, as Austin puts it, hollow or void. So, let's recap. A constative utterance describes a pre-existing state of affairs and can be true or false. A performative utterance enacts some new state of affairs. It does something, and it can succeed or fail. That figure of enactment is really key with performative utterances. Performative utterances are speech as enactment. That's why here in performance studies we like them so much, because we act a lot. Let's talk about failure. Failure is the other key element here. Performative utterances can succeed or fail. And if we look closely at the excerpt that we read for today, we may find that performative utterances are even more interesting when they fail than when they succeed. They fail in a variety of ways. I'm not going to go through all of them, but a few key things to keep in mind when thinking about performative failure. Performative utterances rest on convention and reiteration. In performance terms, we might say that performative utterances are scripted. They are forms of twice-behaved behavior. So again, the marriage or a baptism, these ceremonies, to be successful, we need to have a conventional sense as a society of what that ceremony does, of what it is. The fact that performative utterances are founded in reiteration is absolutely crucial. This is one place that this theory, this linguistic theory, this speech act theory, begins to have applications for those of us in the performing arts, where reiteration, or we might say rehearsal, is so foundational to what we do. All of our artworks, all of our performed works are grounded in this same reiterative structure. They are performative in that sense. But let's switch things around. So we know it's infelicitous for a priest to baptize a penguin. There's no convention that exists to baptize a penguin. But what about the other way around? What if the penguin tried to baptize the human? In that case, it would also fail, but because the penguin is an inappropriate actor to be carrying through this ceremony. Similarly, if I were to smash a bottle on this microphone and say, I dubbed this ship the Battlestar Galactica, that would be inappropriate as well. That would be a failed performative utterance, because that's not... I certainly do not have the authority to christen a starship, and the procedure, the convention, everything about this just is wrong. Not false, but infelicitous. Another category of misfire is when the procedure or circumstances are correct, and the people carrying through the procedure and circumstances are correct, but somebody just makes a mistake. Things just fail. There was a pretty high-profile example of this in the news back in 2008, so about 10 years ago. It was at the inauguration of President Barack Obama. And if you can remember that, or if you were watching, or if you remember news reports from that time, the key moment in the inauguration is a performative utterance. It is Obama taking the oath of office, swearing to uphold the Constitution. And back in 2008, you'll remember that Chief Justice John Roberts, who was the appropriate person for the convention, actually mucked things up a little bit. And Obama went along with them. They talked over each other and ended up saying the wrong words. Right? So this was a failed performative act. Now, and I bring this up in part in case you are unconvinced that we accord some odd magical powers to speech acts. Even though this was a minor mistake, ostensibly we could get through the whole ceremony and be like, well, whatever, they got a few words wrong. Obama's still the president, let's go on with it, we've got a lot of other business to do running the country, that sort of thing. Even though it was a minor mistake, they didn't do that. They went and redid the whole ceremony. Obama and Roberts got together the next day in the White House and re-performed the oath of office felicitously, successfully. So authority in the law rest on these odd types of speech, on these performative utterances. The world is made in these moments of performative speech. So these two ways performatives can fail, these are misfires. These are situations in which the act is purported or claimed, but ultimately void, not accomplished. We also have a set of infelicities for when the act is completed, but it in fact proves hollow or void, where it falls apart after the fact. Something else goes wrong. Austin calls these abuses, and they're set off kind of apart from the other set of misfires because they have to do with some more shadowy world of intentions, the uncertain world of the future. They're far less material. The first set of abuses we can call insincerities. This is where the performative act rests on one's interior state, but that interior state may not fully match what the act purports to do. It gets a bit depressing, right? So let's say, for an example, I'm dating a woman, and I tell her, I promise to be faithful to you forever, but really, I'm thinking about making out with her brother. That performative utterance would fail for being insincere, right? I clearly have no intention to be faithful if I'm already planning some infidelity. If a performative is about your internal state, you need to actually have that internal state. You must mean your promise, and you must mean your threat, or whatever else, for it to be felicitous. I think we can all think of a promise we or another have made with no intention of keeping it. And that's what this category of insincerity is. That is another crucial way in which performative utterances fail. So there's a variety of ways in which performative speech can fail. There are myriad more ways in which performative speech can fail, and I think in your readings, in your discussions, in your assignments, you'll think through, you'll find even more. And I encourage you not just to identify failed performances, but think about why it is important that performative speech can fail. That's the key question. Hopefully this miniature lecture helped to elucidate your reading for this week. Certainly, we've gotten just a taste of what speech act theory includes, and I encourage you, if you find this topic interesting, to go to the library and check out the full edition of Austin's lectures, How to Do Things with Words, especially if you enjoyed his examples of animals and people failing their performative acts in spectacular ways. It's a very funny book when you really get into it, so check it out.